Hello everyone. So now we come to lecture 4 of Hospitality Hotels Services. In this lecture, we are going to learn the format of balance sheet. So all of you take out your notebooks and whatever comes across in further slides, you will be supposed to write that. It's a very simple format of balance sheet what we are going to follow. Majority of hotels are generally a limited companies. They are joint stock companies itself. So whatever format you studied for a joint stock company in company final accounts in standard 12, I repeat, in standard 12 part 2 of accounts, company account companies act 2013 format what you studied for balance sheet, it is going to be same because majority of hotels will come under a limited company. So very first we will understand what are the items of balance sheet, what are the main contents of balance sheet. All of you take out your notebooks, give this heading items of balance sheet and note it down. There are two major items in balance sheet. First one of that is equity and liabilities. Okay, all of you know one side of balance sheet is liabilities side, but here instead of simply liabilities we call it as equity and liabilities because equity means the capital. Here capital would be provided by shareholders, so we call it as equity, and all other liabilities will come on the liabilities side. And obviously you know the second item of balance sheet is assets. Okay, so there are two main elements in balance sheet, liabilities and assets, but instead of simply liabilities here we'll call it as equity and liabilities and assets. Now there are three main headings to be given in equity and liabilities. First is shareholders funds. Okay, owners money. Shareholders funds, that forms basically part of this equity. Okay, what comes in the part of equity is shareholders funds. Within liabilities we'll have two types of liabilities. Non-current liability, which is payable after 1 year period of time, and current liabilities which are payable within 1 year period of time. So three items or three headings will come in equity and liabilities side. Instead of liabilities we'll call it as what? Equity and liabilities. Equity means shareholders funds, owners money, and liabilities, there are two types of liabilities, non-current liabilities and current liabilities. And only two broad headings will come in assets. One is non-current assets and the other is current assets. All of you make this, pause the video and make this entire chart in your notebook. Once again I revise it. There are two main items in balance sheet. Simply instead of liabilities we call it as equity and liabilities, and the other one is assets. Equity and liabilities, what is equity? Owner's money, capital. So here we call it as shareholders funds. And equity and liabilities, which are the two kinds of liabilities we are going to have? Non-current liabilities and current liabilities. Assets, two main things, non-current assets and current assets. So now we proceed with the format of balance sheet. All of you take out your notebooks and make this format of balance sheet. One full page format, first column particulars, second note number and third amount. And in this same order, if you remember, you studied the format of balance sheet even in standard 12. Okay. Pause the video and make this format and then play the video and see the contents of balance sheet in detail. Now, as we discussed on the last slide, what are the two main items in the balance sheet, two main headings in the balance sheet? Instead of liabilities, what do we call it as? Equity and liabilities. Give this heading in your notebooks, everyone. Equity and liabilities. Now, which three things we studied in equity and liabilities? What do you mean by equity? Owner's money. Equity means owner's money, capital. Here we call it as shareholders funds. So after equity and liabilities, write number one, equity and liability is shareholders funds. Basically in equity and liabilities, equity part represents what? Shareholders funds. Now within shareholders funds, two things will come. A, share capital. So whatever money is borrowed from the public by issuing shares when the company is formed is called share capital. And B, you will have reserves and surplus. That is also shareholders' money, because what is reserve? Amount kept aside from the profits of the business. So whatever amount you keep aside from the profits of the business, basically that is sacrifice of shareholders only. So reserves and surplus comes in shareholders funds. By not taking the dividend, they retain that amount in the business itself. So two things will come in shareholders funds. Which two things? Share capital and reserves and surplus. What was the second thing? Equity means shareholders funds. Liabilities, which were the two types of liabilities? Come on, yes? Correct. Non-current liabilities. So second heading all of you give non-current liabilities. Now here only one thing will come. Non-current liability means the money which we have to pay over a long period of time. So long-term loans, those money which we have to pay after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, those kind of long-term loans of hotel will come in non-current liabilities. And then which was the second kind of liability? Current liabilities. Two things we will have in current liabilities. Trade payables. Trade payables in bracket you all can mention. It will include creditors and bills payable. I repeat, trade payables means the payables which arise in trading business. Which payables arise in trading business? Creditors and bills payable. So in bracket all of you can write creditors and bills payable. They are to be paid within 1 year period of time. And then second is other current liabilities, other than trade payables and creditors and bills payable, or other liabilities like outstanding expenses, provident fund, bank overdraft, all other kinds of liabilities we will write under the heading other current liabilities. So liabilities side of the format is done. Now after equity and liabilities, its total will be done. After the total, all of you give the heading assets. Okay, next part of your balance sheet in the same page below liabilities, all of you give the heading assets. Now, which are the two kinds of assets we studied? Non-current assets and current assets. So first heading in assets will come non-current assets. I hope everyone is writing it. Wherever required, you can pause the video and write it. Okay. First give the heading non-current assets. Now non-current means those assets which stay in the business for long period of time. So they will include fixed assets. Fixed assets like in case of hotels, furnitures, fixtures, beds, tables, swimming pool accessories, all those things. Okay, the hotel building itself, they are fixed assets which stay in the business for a long period of time. And second, it includes long-term loans and advances. These are those loans and advances which are given by the hotel to outside people. Okay, but for more than 1 year period of time. So if any loan advance money is given by hotel to someone for more than 1 year period of time, it will come in non-current assets. Only two items in non-current assets: fixed assets and long-term loans and advances. Which was the second kind of asset? Current assets. Those assets which remain in the business. Current assets have three characteristics. Those assets which remain in the business for short period of time, less than 1 year. Easily convertible into cash. They can be easily convertible into cash. And third, they keep on changing. Current means the amount does not remain stable or constant, it keeps on changing. Three things are there. Inventories. In case of hotel, inventories means bed sheets, pillows, linen, curtains. Then restaurants will have utensils. All these stock of these things. Stock of utensils, stock of bed sheets, stock of linen, stock of cleanable items, consumables. All these things will come under the category of inventories in case of hotels. Then trade receivables. Like trade payable includes creditors and bills payable. In bracket of trade receivables, write down debtors and bills receivables. Okay, trade receivables means receivables which arise in the course of a trading business, that includes debtors. So in bracket of trade receivables, mention debtors and bills receivables. And lastly, cash and cash equivalents. Okay, so cash and cash equivalents is the third current asset. Very simple format of balance sheet. Let us recapitulate it once again. Two main headings instead of simply liabilities and assets: equity and liabilities and assets. Equity and liabilities. Equity, shareholders funds. Liabilities, non-current liabilities and current liabilities. Which two things in shareholders funds? Share capital and reserves and surplus. Non-current liability only loans, long-term loans. Which two things in current liabilities? Trade payables and other current liabilities. Within assets, which two assets? Non-current assets, current assets. Within non-current assets, fixed assets and long-term loans and advances. Within current assets, three things: inventories, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents. Learn this format. Without seeing, write it once again in your note. So that will be all for today's lecture. Format of balance sheet you all must learn today itself, so that by next lecture we can start with mixed question where we have to make P&L statement also and balance sheet also. Okay, so that will be all in today's lecture. Bye everyone, take care, see you in the next lecture.